So then, the Desafio Ruta 40 YPF 2026. Let's have a little bit of a talk about this. This was the most recent round of the W2RC, concluded about 2 weeks ago. And over the course of this week, I've been able to sit down and watch the highlights from it, follow some of the storylines from it. I was quite surprised that actually I didn't end up getting many spoilers, but we'll get back to that a bit later on. I want to start off with the bikes, and it was a win for Chucky Sanders from Ricky Brybeck and Tosha Shirena. Behind them were Van Beveren and Howes. It's interesting to see some of the changes that were going on in the class as well, because when you have a look at some of the people that were competing, didn't we end up having, Doherty's gone across into the Rally GP class with Hero. But, it was quite convincingly one for Sanders over the course of this competition, and it was well done to him for picking up the win. When it comes to the W2RC standings now, that makes it 2 wins in a row. With the 5th place on the Dakar, he is leading the points on 67. Second place is Tosha Shirena with 2 second places and the 3rd on the Dakar, meaning that he's on 64. He now loses the lead to Sanders in the overall classification, with Luciano Benavides in 3rd on 61 points. The Dakar winner was 6th in the BP Ultimate Rally Raider Portugal, and then 4th this time out. Brybeck, by the way, who finished 3rd, is now up to 4th in the standings ahead of Van Beveren. And I don't really have too much else to say when it comes to, in particular, the motorbikes. I'm not a specialist when it comes to two-wheeled motorsports. I know a few things, but I think most of my knowledge is actually outside of a couple of errant things to MotoGP games, limited to Rally Raid, which feels wild, and that it shouldn't necessarily be the case, but I grew up with the Dakar Rally, so it's probably why that ended up being the case for me. When we have a look across at the cars now, it was, again, one that went all sorts of different ways. Nasser Al-Attiyah looked like he could be about to get a win, but no, he ended up 3rd behind Henk Lattigan, who was competitive for a lot of the event, but ended up picking up issues in the penultimate stage. Probably would have won had it not been for the 3-minute penalty, but instead the win still goes to Toyota Gazoo Racing, W2RC, but it goes to the American Seth Quintero. Well done to Quintero for that, by the way. I think that is his first win in a W2RC event, and it puts him up to 3rd in the standings, behind Nasser Al-Attiyah in 2nd on 111 to the 101 for Quintero, but on 114 is Sebastian Loeb. Loeb won last time out in Portugal, 4th for the Dakar and 4th here in Argentina. But these stages, which have been tricky for him before, because remember, some of these stages were used in the Dakar back in the day when it was in Latin America. But for Loeb as well, these are stages, in some cases, that he would know from his time in the WRC, not the W2RC, because these are some of the old Rally Argentina tests. So yeah, good job from Loeb, only being 4 minutes off the win after 16 hours of competitive action. He was well clear of the next drivers, them being Variawa, Yazid Al-Raji, and then the non-W2RC Gastaldi, then Nani Roma as the lead Ford, then it was Halpern in the non-W2RC X-Raid, and then the leading challenger, Walkner. And the other classes were also interesting in terms of the battles that you saw. Stock is the kind of boost that Mr. Dakar, Stefan Petter Hansel, needed. He had rotten luck in the Dakar. I don't think he did BP Ultimate, did he? But yeah, he wins by 10 minutes from Rokas Bachuska with Sarah Price in 3rd. It was only those 3 in the category, but Defender are going to get a good publicity out of this. So, good job to all 3 of them for making it to the end without particularly profound issues. Yeah, the Challenger class went the way of Walkner, then it was Alexander Pinto in 2nd, and Per Klassen in 3rd. I find it interesting because I seemed to remember Klassen competing under a Dutch license. Now she's competing under a South African license. But yeah, with Lopez in 4th. It meant that you ended up with 3 cars here that were Tauruses. The one that wasn't was still on the podium, and that was Klaassen. And then when it comes to the SSVs, which did make an appearance, there were 3 of them in the standings at the end as well. Sidabras took the win from Pifera and Nogueira. And what does it mean for any of the standings there? I actually don't know, because I'll have to try and pull that up quickly. So in the stocks, it means that Bachuska is leading on 199 points from Petter Hansel, and Sarah Price is in 3rd. Turns out I was wrong, and Petter Hansel did do. I don't remember him being covered in the coverage, though, for BP Ultimate Portugal, but he picked up the win. Challengers, Klaassen is leading on 112 from Pinto on 103. But then they were the only ones who did the trip to Latin America. And then in the SSVs, Montero was still leading. Sidabras has jumped up to 3rd in the standings, 93 points, but Montero is leading still on 123. And with that, I do want to just talk about the W2RC for a moment. And the reason being is because, I mean, we're not going to be talking about it for a few months now. The next one is Morocco, Rally du Maroc on the 28th of September. We don't have the South African round returning this year. And it's a shame that we only end up with, 2 rounds in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi, 1 in Europe with Portugal, and then you have Morocco and Argentina. I would love to see more things in the W2RC in the future, and I don't think they get a chance to properly promote stuff because they suffer from a similar thing to what WEC does in its endurance championship. It's hard to follow endurance championships, except WEC can have a thriving community outside Le Mans. It's got a popular video game now in Le Mans Ultimate. It's got quite the following because of the category, the hypercar class. Question is, how do you build something like that for Rally Raid? I think this is something the FIA needs to consider more generally as an organiser, as a sanctioning body, because WRC is currently going through a tender process for a takeover. The World RX has died. It's going to hopefully come back in a couple of years with a new set of regulations, and then you have the W2RC, which has some successes. It does. I'm actually quite impressed with how it's managed to maintain its momentum over the years. But we've got Dacia dipping at the end of this year. And yeah, Ford are invested in it. And yes, Toyota are invested in it. ProDrive, we could potentially see invest elsewhere because they have been great, both with the BRX machines and now the Dacias. But the X-Raid team is privateer. That's pretty much it. And how many of the entries in the Ultimate class are Toyotas? It's a similar kind of thing that the WRC has, and I don't know what the solution is. Do you try to strip it back? Make it so that... what was it? They did it before, didn't they? Where they made the cars 2-wheel drive. I don't think that was particularly successful for the Dakar. Given that we've now got the current T1 Plus Ultimate machines. Or do you just go, okay, complete spec, put a chassis on top, which is pretty much what they're doing already. Except the manufacturers put a lot of their own stuff into it. So you end up with an arms race between, say, ProDrive and TGR and M Sport. Very similar to the WRC in those ways. But I would just love for there to be something that could be affordable, that could be a platform that could be carried across into other series. So, I don't know, maybe you beef up the WRC 27 regs, much like, this has been a thing that I've thought about for a while. How about with World RX, the next generation is based off of the WRC 27 cars, and then you have the Rally 2s go across as well, because they're already doing that at the lower level. Just try and create these unified platforms. It makes it easier for people to compete in other series. We've just seen the latest announcement of rules convergence for IMSA and WEC for the next generation of hypercars. I am so stoked for seeing what that's going to be like. Why don't we do that with pretty much every series that we can? I think that would only benefit us, especially if you could do proper cost caps as well. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, folks. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for your continued support for this channel. But until next time, bye for now.